going to show you how to make a simple fruit-based syrup so that you can really reduce the amount of sweetener you're adding to top things like waffles and pancakes. So you can really take any frozen fruit, and I recommend frozen fruit because it actually breaks down quicker and it's quicker to cook. It's also something that you can have on hand and not, blueberries, you get them for a few days and then they can become mush pretty quickly. They're also quite expensive when they're fresh. Frozen, you get many more for the same price, and then they're available, at a moment's notice. This is really simple. You just heat up a saucepan, and you don't want to let it get actually too hot before you add the fruit. It's kind of opposite of when we're sauteing. We just want to start heating this up, starting to release the juices from the fruit. Wait till it's too hot. The natural sugars will burn to the bottom of the pan. And then adding something with some sugar will help to break down the fruit more quickly. So I'm just going to add some maple syrup. I'm going to add a fair amount, but of course, you realize I have probably a quarter the amount of maple syrup as I do blueberries. So if you take the same amount of syrup that you would normally have if you were using pure maple syrup, you're getting only about a quarter of the sugar that you would normally get. So it really reduces how much you're going to have. I'll just go ahead and add that. And go ahead and make extra. This freezes really well, so you wouldn't want to keep it for a long time in the refrigerator because I'm not adding enough sugar that it would be enough to make, say, like the canned or jarred blueberry syrup you get at the store. That's a lot more sugar than I'm putting in here. And but it will keep for a week in the fridge, and then I like to freeze things in small amounts. I make a lot of use of ice cube trays, and then just freeze things that you get about an ounce per little ice cube indent, and so 1 or 2 of those would be enough for like a big plate pancakes or waffles. And you can pretty quickly just pop those out, especially if you have the silicone ones, and then heat them up in the microwave and they're ready to go. If you want to use even less sugar than I'm using here, you can add, or if you just like cinnamon flavor, you can add a little cinnamon, or any of the ginger, winter homey spices tend to make us think that there's more sugar in something than there is, so it's nice to add. I don't want it to be super cinnamony, so I'm just going to add a little just to give it a little bit complexity of flavor. And then if you just wait till this is warm, it'll still be pretty runny, so you do want to cook it down a little bit. I have a whisk or a masher around. We'll start to, as it starts to boil, I'll mash a few of the blueberries, and that will help break them down. You want to release a little bit of the insides of whatever fruit you're using because there's some pectins and kind of natural thickeners in there that will help. In addition to combining the sugar and cooking that down and caramelizing it a little bit, it will thicken it a little bit. If you don't like chunky syrup, you could also, heat this up, smash up all the blueberries, and you can always strain it and have more of a pure blueberry syrup as well. But then you're getting rid of all this great fiber that comes with the berries. So I like to keep them in. I'm gonna turn up my heat. You could also blend this, and then you're going to keep the fiber, but it's not going to be the same as unblended. So we know that when you blend fruit, say to make a smoothie, or the more extreme version where you make juice, where you're filtering out all the solids, every bit of processing step you add takes away the work that your stomach has to do and increases the speed at which the sugars in the fruits, whether they be naturally occurring or not, get into your blood. And so the faster sugar goes into your blood, the more it's like a highly processed sugar, and the more that you get that spike and crash in blood sugar that makes you feel not great and increases your risk of diseases like diabetes, things like that. All right, so we got a good simmer going on here. I just want a vigorous simmer, or even like a low boil. Just want to cook off a little bit of that liquid to use the reduction. We call that a reduction. So we're cooking off some of the liquid, and we'll kind of naturally thicken it. A lot of syrups are thickened just by nature of mostly being a sugar syrup, and then they might add a little flavor or juice to it. But we're just going to try and thicken up the natural liquids that are there to give some body to the sauce. If you want to have just fruit and no sugar at all, you're getting into the realm of where it's kind of tasting like a diet food. It's not as enjoyable, but you certainly could add to some water. You could add a teaspoon of cornstarch, add a little bit of cold water in a little dish, just like I have my cinnamon here, and stir that till the cornstarch dissolves, and then pour it in just like you would for the stir fry sauces that we've made, and thicken it up. And then you can get away with really not having much sugar at all. Still really tasty, but it definitely feels like you don't add any, it feels like there's a little something missing, like someone tricked you with your syrup for your pancakes or waffles, which isn't a good feeling. And then the other thing to remember is that this will look a lot thinner when it's hot. When it's cool, it will thicken up a lot. So you don't want to cook it till it's the thickness you want when it's hot, because it'll be kind of solid and more like a jam when it cools off. So we're actually just about there. Again, when you get the blueberries this hot, just whisking it actually breaks them up quite a bit. I like to do this with frozen raspberries. Sometimes I'll chop up some frozen peaches. Peach syrup is really tasty. You can actually do this where you're having, if you use like peaches and agave, or some white sugar. You can even add chilies and things to make it a little bit more interesting. And having that on a little bit of ice cream or frozen yogurt is really tasty and kind of like a fun, complex summer dessert. So it's kind of hard to tell how thick it is on the heat, so I just kind of pull it off a little bit. Take a look. Still pretty thin. I'm gonna let that go a little bit longer. Anything that has sugar in it too, you want to whisk or stir frequently, otherwise it's a high chance of burning to the bottom of the pan. If it starts to stick but it doesn't smell burnt yet, pull it off, put the lid on, and then just let it sit on a cool spot for a minute, and then the moisture will release what's stuck to the bottom of the pan pretty quickly. There's no saving it once it burns the pan though. Like that burnt taste will permeate the whole syrup. Starting to get a little bit more body. I'm just gonna let it boil a little bit longer. The more you stir, the higher the heat you can turn it up to, you can speed up the process. As it starts to thicken, you'll notice that when you stir that you're making like a streak, that you can see the bottom of the pan for a second. Whereas when we started, it would just, it'd pull back together right away. You couldn't see that. So you can tell that's one of the things that I use to tell if it's starting to thicken. The more you concentrate it, the less liquid and the more sugar there is, but you get a thicker syrup. I think we're about ready to finish up now. You can see I can make these good streaks where you can see the pan. It's a lot thicker than when we started. The bubbles are getting bigger. That's the other thing, they're a little tiny when there's a lot of liquid. As it gets thicker, a lot more. They stay longer. I've turned the heat off, they continue. So I'll go ahead and pour some of this into a little measuring cup that I have back here so you can see the rich color. Be careful, if this splatters on you, you will burn yourself, so it's very hot. I mean, it almost looks black here, I think, but you can see better in the pan. You can see this nice, rich purple color. That's gonna be more the color that you're gonna see on your pancakes once it's diluted on something. Hope you enjoyed this alternative syrup recipe. I think you're really going to like it. It's going to be another way to just get even that much more produce into your breakfast.